Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining us. This is the Wednesday Roundtable with the Liberty First Foundation. My name is Michael Voss. I'm with No Sound Bites Allowed, and I am happy to be here with you to talk about some of the issues. Now, if you notice, I'm the only one here at the moment, but my fellow colleagues will be joining me very shortly. We'll have Frank Johnson and Mike Marshall of the Liberty First Foundation. We'll have our very good friend Dal Grimm will be joining us as well, and perhaps some other individuals, but they're running a little late because we all work. We all have jobs that we have to do. So they're running a little bit late from their jobs, and I'm the one who's starting you all off. Again, I thank each and every one of you. I look forward to all of your comments. Now, the Liberty First Foundation on Wednesday, we have a panel discussion talking about some of the issues in their constitutionality. Are these things legal? Are they efficient? Are they effective? How are they going to impact you today and in the future? And what kind of consequence will we see from the legislation, the laws, the regulations, the things that are affecting us all? We're going to talk about all of that. And let me move right into some of that. Now, when my colleagues show up, we're going to be talking about a lot more than just this. Oh, I should mention, of course, we look forward to seeing your chat. That's on Rumble, on YouTube, Facebook, multiple different platforms. We want to hear from you. So you can leave your chat. You can do a super chat. You can do a Rumble rant if you wish to get our attention ahead of time. But we always look forward to all your comments. So they're going to be coming on in just a moment. Let me start off with some of the news that I think, well, I'm not sure if we're going to be able to get to that with them here, but I wanted to mention one thing that I think you're not going to see it in the news right now. It's been buried by the mainstream news media, but I think it's important because this is news that came out on Monday. Here it is Wednesday, and no one's talking about this. No one realizes that this is important. That Elon Musk reveals that DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, they have a new target. They're looking at Congress. They're looking at members of Congress and how some of these members have gone from a net worth negative to being worth multi-millions of dollars. An example of that would be Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. She's someone who was a bartender, had college debt, and suddenly, somehow, in the space of her time in Congress, is now worth about $17 million. She only gets paid $174,000 a year. She's been there less than 10 years. How do you turn $174,000 into $17 million? That's a really interesting question that we all have asked from time to time, but it kind of gets blown under, just set aside, especially by the mainstream news media. No one really investigates and says, well, how do you get that money? Oh, they're investing? No one has that kind of investing record. I know. I used to be a stockbroker, did that for about 10 years. I have watched successful people can't match the rate of return that we've seen from members of Congress just because they have an investment portfolio. Not unless you know where the market's going to go. So I do look forward to seeing the Department of Government Efficiency look into these members of Congress, because I'm pretty sure, and I think we all agree, there's probably a bunch of corruption that is at the end of this, that somewhere along the line, there is corruption. In fact, in this, according to the New York Post article, Elon Musk was asked, he was in Wisconsin, and he was asked, how do they get $20 million if they're earning $200,000 a year? We're going to try and figure that out. I think he goes on to say, where is it? No, not there. Where is it? I had the section highlighted where he's talking about essentially many of these members, they send out checks. No, I don't have it there. Okay. What we believe is happening is that checks go out from the members of Congress to non-government organizations, sometimes called NGOs. And they go overseas into different departments, and you never see it. And then donations come into these members, like through Act Blue, where these members will go to a leadership PAC, like with what's his guy, Smalls. They'll use leadership PACs. Former members of government, like Andrew Cuomo, will create leadership PACs with this money that they can then donate to candidates. This is how Democrats get to take corporate money without saying they've taken a corporate donation. The corporation will donate to a PAC, a leadership PAC, and that leadership PAC will give the money to the Democrat candidate. So they basically money launder the funds. And so Democrats can say, well, no, I don't get any money from corporations. No, you get it from a leadership PAC that got it from the corporation. Great example is Josh Riley of the New York 22nd District. That's how he got his corporate donations. He was taking it from a former disgraced senator that he had worked for when he was in Washington, D.C. for over 20 years. And he was getting donations from that leadership PAC. And that leadership PAC was getting donations from corporations. But he could tell voters, I didn't take any corporate money, not directly. And so this is what we see that DOJ will be looking into. And I think it's rather important that they do look into this, that we do have that conversation. And I think it's important because if we can isolate the corruption, we can improve our government. And some people who are deep in that corruption, if it exists, should be removed. Because that's what our Constitution is supposed to be about. We're not supposed to have people who are going to be members of our government forever. That isn't supposed to be a career. But they've taken advantage of the fact that people aren't paying attention to create careers, to invite corruption, like we've seen with Andrew Cuomo, like we've seen with Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, Chuck Schumer, Nancy Pelosi, and many, many others. We did get a comment here, and this is from Joanna on Facebook. She says, thank you, Elon. Keep digging. You're going to find rhinos everywhere. And I'm happy whether he finds, I don't care if it's a Republican, if it's a Democrat, I don't care who he's going after. If there is corruption, then we should be aware of that corruption. There should be clear transparency. The transparency you've been promised from Obama, from Bush, from Biden, from every president in the last 50 years have promised that they're going to be completely transparent to you. And now that we are actually getting transparency, that we are finding out where our taxpayer money is going, funny enough, Democrats are front of the line saying, no, you don't need to tell that to the public. We need to keep giving this money to terrorist organizations, to waste for fraudulent businesses. We just need to keep making those payments because it's not their money, it's your money. And they're getting donations from those groups, those NGOs, those fraudsters, and they're using it to maintain power, to maintain a quality of life you and I will never have. So I want him to go and look for that. But again, that's something that's not in the news right now. And I'm waiting for my co-host to show up and we'll talk about other things. But I wanted to address that because I think it's very important. I also think that it's kind of important, and I'll show you this as well until everyone else shows up. This is Sheldon Daniels. He's running for Congress. And the thing that I think is very important about that is, and this is my personal pet peeve, perhaps, he's going to be running against Jasmine Crockett. Now, Jasmine Crockett has been showing up along with AOC as one of the, and perhaps Gavin Newsom, as individuals that Democrats are using to try and gain attention. They're trying to move from 27%. Democrats have a disapproval or a lack of approval of, they have only 27% of Democrats actually approve of the Democratic Party. They have failed. And in failing the Democratic Party, they failed the American people because the Democrats follow the party line. And that's a problem. They should be focused on the American people, which is what we're getting from Donald Trump. And whether you like Donald Trump or not, I don't care. That's you. You can have whatever feeling you want about Donald Trump. That's your right. That's your life. You're an individual. You have the agency. Have whatever feeling you want about him. But here's the reality, separate of any feeling. Donald Trump made promises on the campaign trail. Donald Trump is living up to those promises. Whether you like them or not, he is doing what he said, and he is living up to what the voters wanted him to do, like defunding the Department of Education. Now, the argument can be made, and we've made it on this channel before with my associates, that defunding the Department of Education is a great idea because it has failed. Kids are graduating, as we showed you, 3 weeks ago in Hartford. The Hartford Public School had one of their students, I believe the valedictorian, graduate. She can't read. She can't write. She is in college now, looking at 6 years of college, which is absolutely overly expensive. And she has to spend the first 2 years learning to read and write because throughout the public school education she received, they didn't care. They just promoted her along the line because they had to. They had to. Otherwise, it would be an example that the Department of Education has failed. Rote memorization doesn't work. That doesn't make a literate, ready for the world a student. And that's incredibly important. And we've talked a lot about that. I know on my channel, I've talked to people about my high school, Vanderchild's High School, was 4,000 students. Today, in the place of that same building, nothing has been added. Same building, same number of classrooms, same number of students, same number of teachers, 4,000 students. But there's 4 high schools, one on each floor of what used to be a Vanderchild's High School, one single high school. Why did that happen? Because we have 4 times as many principals and vice principals and administration. They're spending more money so the teachers union can raise more money so they can donate to Democrats that will continue to make it possible to have more and more and more teachers. This is part of the Department of Education. It doesn't make the students any smarter, doesn't make them any more capable of being able to read and write. And again, this is like the NGO. This goes back to what we were talking about with Elon Musk. So the members of Congress, they allow and fund massively, the most funding in the world, funding our schools to do rote memorization. The administrations grow and grow and grow to do the paperwork to get more and more money from Congress. The teachers union grabs that money, whether the teachers want it or not, and they donate it all to like 95% to Democrats. The Democrats get rich. They get to be reelected. The teachers union gets rich. Your students, your kids can't read or write. So Jasmine Crockett is part of this crowd who are trying to eliminate transparency, whether you like that or not, doesn't matter. She's looking to end the transparency to go back to what we had under Biden, what we had under Obama. And that wasn't a better economy. Those weren't smarter students. We want to go back to dumbing them down. That's not a good thing. And she does it in the most ghetto, fabulous way possible. Well, the good news, Sheldon Daniels is running against her. And I think that will be a positive because I think it's a better representation of Black people in America because most people in America aren't ghetto fabulous. I live in the Bronx. My family's been in the same apartment for over 50, almost 60 years in the same place. And we've seen the neighborhoods change. And I can tell you that most minorities, most African Americans aren't ghetto fabulous. I know the news media will like you to think that, and Jasmine Crockett will like you to think that. That's not the case. Now, that doesn't mean I'm endorsing Sheldon Daniels. I haven't heard his policies yet. I don't know. But I am saying it's good that we get the challenge and not just assume that, well, Black people are monolithic. They must be Democrats, and we have to accept that. And if they're pandering to us, trying to be ghetto fabulous, instead of being a lawyer and a member of Congress, well, we have to accept that anyway. I don't agree, because that's how we get corruption. When politicians pander, we lose, each and every one of us, whether you like them or not, whether you like their policies or not. If they are pandering to you, you are losing. That is inserting corruption into our system. They're not doing their job. They are failing you. It just is a really nice show that they're putting on to distract you from how badly they are failing you and how many consequences are coming from their failure. Like in the education system, again, Department of Education has failed our kids. They can't read. They can't write, which means they can't have a career. They don't have a life. They're going to do worse than we have done because they can't do the basics. And the Democrats don't want the transparency to address that. That's a shame. Now, I do see there's a couple of things here. Grace mentions that there are grown adults who can't do basic math. That is true. And many of them, and more of them today, are kids who went through the system based on changing the math under the Department of Education. What is it? Common Core math? Was that failure? I mean, we've been doing math the same way for thousands of years. And the way that the Greeks were doing the math, that's what I learned how to do math, in the same way that the Greeks learned how to do math. And we were able to put people onto the moon. We have Common Core, and now kids can't figure out how to. If you give them $10, they can't give you change when you're buying something at the store. They can't do math. That's why we have computers that do the math for them. The electronic cashiers will give the change automatically to you. You've seen those cash registers that will spit out the change for them because they can't do the math. That is a current problem. Grace goes on to say that vocabulary isn't language. Reading and speaking a language, that includes one's own native tongue. That's true. But language makes up vocabulary. You pick and choose the words out of the language to be part of your vocabulary. When people are speaking in the most ghetto fabulous way, that isn't a language like we've often heard. What was it they used to say? That you had to teach blacks Ebonics. That's right. They said, well, black people need Ebonics because they can't speak English, which is one of the most insulting things I've ever heard. It is so disrespectful. It is so dehumanizing. And that is the ghetto fabulous nature of how we hear from Jasmine Crockett, who is a lawyer. She knows. She has a massive vocabulary. She has to. It's part and parcel of being a successful attorney. You have to have a deep knowledge of language to be able to do that job. So she can speak better. She chooses not to. Why? Because she wants to pander. And she's using that and her race as a means to deflect any critique. It's really sad. Let's see. Grace goes on to say, Bill Gates was a big force in Common Core. There are people with mechanical engineering degrees who can't figure Common Core out. I've always thought Common Core was absolutely horrendous. Absolutely horrendous. It just doesn't make sense. Again, if the Greeks could figure out the distance from the Earth to the sun and knew that the sun was the center of the solar system, and they could calculate the distance from the Earth to the sun within literally fractions of a percent of difference, why do we need Common Core? We don't need to change the math. The math, it works. We know this. We created computers and the internet with that math, not Common Core, with the original math. Why do we have to change it? Oh, math is racist. Remember that in California? Remember that in 2018, 2019, math 2020? Math is racist, which is the most stupid thing I've ever heard. Numbers are numbers. Numbers are not race. But these are the things that we have to look at and address as our government is trying to transition back to a smaller, more effective, more efficient government. And that means we can't allow these false narratives to distract us anymore. Because that's why our government has bloated so much, because we have more distractions, we have more paperwork being pushed around, and people aren't able to pay attention to the primary details. And that's a problem. Okay, so I wanted to talk about those two things just to bring them up. And matter of fact, I'm going to bring up one other thing. And when my co-hosts show up, we'll go into some others. But while I have the time with you, let me also mention something that you may not have noticed. Today, this is somewhat breaking news. Today, Donald Trump, one of the promises he made to us, the American people, whether you voted for him or not, he promised you that he would do mass deportations, that he would take illegal aliens, people who have no authorization or right to be in the United States, that he would collect them and he would deport them because they are a strain on our economy, which is a fact. We've heard that from Eric Adams in New York. We've heard that from Johnson and Lori Lightfoot out of Chicago. We've heard this from Mayor Wu out of Boston. We've heard this in most of our major cities. Illegal aliens are breaking our infrastructure. We cannot afford them in the numbers that have come in under the open border policy of the Biden-Harris administration, which was a violation of law, federal law. To have sanctuary cities and sanctuary states is a violation of law. That's a fact. Whether you like that or not is a different question, but it is factually a violation of law. So Trump promised he was going to enforce the existing law. He's not making new law. He's not picking on people. He's following the law. Democrats hate this. I don't understand why. But he also said that he would not primarily focus, but start off with the most violent criminals who are predators on the American people. And he's been living up to his promise. Today, 40 individuals were arrested in Texas. They are believed to be members of a Venezuelan gang and when they seized them, they also seized drugs, which are causing Americans to overdose in larger numbers than we have seen before. Over 100,000 people overdose every single year since 2020. That is depressing. And as we had the open borders, we had the numbers of people overdosing increasing. We had the number of people who were involved in and subjugated to sex slavery increase. We know this. This is a fact. Whether you like it or not has nothing to do with it. This is a fact. Open borders led to more human trafficking. It led to more drug trafficking. It led to more gang violence across America. That is a fact, 1-to-1. And Trump is resolving this issue. He's gathered up these gang members, these Venezuelan gang members, with the FBI and the DPS, Department of Public Safety in Texas. They arrested these individuals. They're going to deport these individuals. This is the promise that you were given, and it is being done. The fact that, and the Democrats want to focus on the fact, well, they're Venezuelans. What does that matter? They're an illegal alien. They weren't invited into America. They came here to take advantage of the American people, to violate our laws, to break our laws on multiple levels, including beyond just the first crime of being an illegal alien. They then added to that crime drug trafficking, violence, extortion, and murder. Many of these individuals, these violent criminals, and we're supposed to keep them in America. This is what the Democrats are asking for. This is what Jasmine Crockett is fighting for. This is what we're seeing from the Democratic Party. Oh, we've got to keep these people here in America. Why? That's my question to them. Why? Why do we need to keep these people in America? Why do we have to keep breaking the law for these individuals? Oh, well, they lived in a poor country. So what? We have poor people in America. They had a difficult life. So do people in America. Oh, but they're brown. They're people with brown skin. Well, that's a racist conclusion. But we have people who have brown skin in America too. Why do we need to protect and why do politicians need to disregard the Constitution and their oath of service to serve the American people? Why do they have to reject that to protect illegal aliens, criminals? Why are they going to focus on them? Why is that their primary concern? I don't understand that. And they never answer that primary question. You, in being elected, you swore an oath to uphold the Constitution of the United States. And the Constitution says that every elected member of Congress is there to serve the public. That is their job, not for the public to serve these politicians, not for the public to follow blindly, to follow a political party. That's not what the Constitution says. It says these elected officials of whatever party they may be in, are supposed to serve you. Why are they not doing that? I wish MSNBC, CNN, ABC, I wish they would actually address this and ask these leadership, Nancy Pelosi, Chuck Schumer, Kirsten Gillibrand, AOC, ask these people, why do they violate their oath of office in this manner? Why are they prioritizing these people? Oh, hey, I am sorry. One of my co-hosts, Dal, joined us. I'm sorry, Dal, I didn't see you there. How long have you been there?
Only a couple of minutes. I apologize to the audience tonight. I was running a little late. I had to gather some things before I was able to get home. So, yeah, I only heard a little bit of that, but I guess you're talking about the Congress and representatives not doing, jack shit.
Well, it's kind of related to the fact that we just had another 40 gang members in Texas. They were arrested by the FBI. They're going to be deported. These are members of the Venezuelan gang. We believe it's the Tren de Aragua. Aragua. I forget. I'm not good with that name.
Aragua. Tren de Aragua or whatever it is. Whatever.
Whatever.
Nicaragua, Aragua. Wawa.
Criminals.
It doesn't matter. They're criminals.
Criminal gang. Venezuelan gang members. Easiest way to say it. And so I was pointing out that Democrats like Jasmine Crockett, they're pandering to, I don't know who, trying to convince the American people that, no, we should keep these illegal aliens in America. And I don't understand. They never say why. That doesn't make any sense. I mean, they can't say, well, it's because they're poor. We have poor people in America. They can't say, well, it's because they're brown skinned. We have brown skinned people in America. Why are they serving these foreigners, breaking their oath of the Constitution to serve the American people? I don't understand it, and no one ever asked them that. No, so I'm happy that Trump is deporting these people because that's the promise he made to us. That is what the law says, and he's doing what the voters wanted. I think that's a good thing. Go ahead.
That is a good thing. The thing is that you could ask that question, and they will never truly answer you. They will always answer around it, because quite honestly, we're seeing through their actions exactly what it is that they want. A couple of years, what was it, 2 years ago, they were talking about the replacement theory, where they were had the open borders and they were bringing in illegals because they wanted to replace the population that currently lives here. And there was a whole bunch of things on MSNBC and NBC and CBS and ABC, and they're all like, no, that's a conspiracy theory. This is not about Dems versus Republicans. This has been, and we see it through everything that we've seen so far, as Trump has exposed through his executive orders and his administration going through all the documentation, that this is about authoritarians versus the citizenry. And the question you have to ask yourself as an American citizen, do you want to be a subject ruled by your government, or do you want to step up to the plate and be the government? You are the ultimate authority in this country. The Constitution progenerates from the people, and the Constitution then subjugates our government. That was how it was constructed. So the question we have now is, we are at a crossroads where we have to decide as a people: are we going to come together and be the government, where we are the ultimate authority of this country and the government has gotten away from us and now it's time to put them back in their place? Or do we just give it all over and be subjects of the government and might as well become part of the United Kingdom again? Because the whole premise of our country was for liberty and independence, self-determination. You cannot do that if you want to be a subject. You have to be a citizen.
Yeah.
And the citizen means that you are taking action to ensure that your government is serving you. That's why they take the oath to the Constitution and the people. That's why you have the enlisted oath, where it says that you protect the people and the Constitution from all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Yep.
Right now, the government is the enemy of the people. And I'm not talking about like we need to go there with pitchforks and torches and, you know, be violent. No, our battlefield right now in this sort of bloodless war that we have going on is the ballot box, is the courts, is the floor of the House, the Senate. We could go there. We could go there through our representatives. If you show up at the representatives and you lean on them and you say, look, you don't do the job, you don't serve us, you're out. We don't need term limits. We just need to show up. And it bothers me to no end. We were just talking about Wisconsin, where I was working, and how the GOP just flubbed this special election. They had guys out there like Pressler and Elon Musk trying to gin up the support and get the people to show up. And they did, for a special election, have quite a turnout. But it was not enough because not enough people showed up. And then one of the reasons that not enough people showed up was because the GOP can't get their heads out their freaking asses to actually get some messaging out there to convince people that they want freedom and liberty.
Language. Remember, we're public.
Well, we're public, yes, but you know what? They can say it on TV now. There are no safe harbor hours on radio. This is it.
Yeah, but YouTube hates us for it, and they suppress us because of it. And it's not because I care. You know that.
I know.
And folks, this is a reason why you should like, share, and subscribe, because we're trying to have a regular human conversation, and we're not doing anything that you'll find far, far worse things being said and shown to you and your kids on public TV, on cable, on comic movies, or worse, you name it, video games, far worse. And yet we get punished when we just have a conversation. And that's a sad thing. And the only way to fight that is with a like, a share, and subscribe. Always. Now, you were mentioning Wisconsin, which I was going to go to a little bit later, but the special election there. And part of the problem is, people had to show up. I mean, the gimmick and the thing that Democrats wanted to focus on, and I think part of the reason why Republicans lost in Wisconsin is twofold. One, they're very confident, or perhaps most of the public are overly confident that Trump swept the Democrats. Democrats have no real power at this moment. Thank God. They can slow down the improvement. They can slow down the defunding, the shrinking of the government, the enforcement of laws that exist on the books already, but they can't change anything. They can't stop anything. And in Wisconsin, a lot of people say, okay, well, then I don't have to come out and vote in these smaller elections, local elections, the midterms. People are saying, well, I don't have to show up because Trump's got it all handled. It's all taken care of. And they don't realize anytime we stop voting, things will always get worse every single time. I don't care what you believe in. I don't care what you support. If you're not voting, it guarantees the worst outcome will always happen. And I think that's part of what happened in Wisconsin. I think the other thing is that the news media, which is very much aligned with the Democratic Party, as we have seen in poll after poll after poll, survey after survey, we know that 80% and sometimes 90%, depending on the business, of these newsrooms, these television stations, they're all Democrats and progressives in there. 80%, 80 to 90%. So they have a bias, and they're pushing that bias. And when Elon Musk went to Wisconsin. He was saying that he would support people for being involved and voting and being in the process of the American system. They used that as a rallying call for Democrats, and not enough Republicans showed up. And that's why we lost that. But we did win the 2 special election races, which isn't being talked about, in Florida.
Right.
We've won. So it's not like, oh, this is all changed and Democrats are going to sweep on through. They want you to believe that because they're not talking about, well, Florida, Republicans won. And they didn't have an Elon Musk showing up there with a paycheck. They weren't blasting that. The news media wasn't talking about it at all. Why? Because the news media knew that they would lose.
Yeah.
So they used this to get Wisconsin, which isn't a Republican stronghold by any means. They went to the weakest link and they pushed their political agenda to get Democrats to outnumber Republicans in showing up, and use the messaging that, well, Trump's got everything in hand, you don't have to bother, and it worked against us. Does that make sense to you?
Yeah, that makes sense. The thing of it is, though, is that it's just indicative of what happens when people choose to be subjected to this. I mean, here is another Supreme Court judge in Wisconsin that's going to be shopped by the Democrats for injunctions against Trump's authority. It's just another one. And they can do this with every state. Yeah, we took Florida, great. But every time we don't show up, we are voting for subjugation, because that's what's going to happen. What you see happening now with the judges, doing district judges doing injunctions against executive orders, that could be stymied by codifying it into law, which we'll get to Mike Johnson in a second, because I got a lot of words for Mike Johnson.
Okay.
But the thing is that every time we ditch on a special election, we are voting for subjugation. And I, for one, refuse to be a subject. I am a citizen of the United States. I am involved. I try to get other people involved, because more voices ultimately mean that we are the government and they have to listen. Otherwise, we, as the multiple voices, can also ignore them. And we can do that by being active locally and in the state. The federal has only a peripheral effect on our lives. We could shut the feds out in our state or in our locality.
10th Amendment. 10th Amendment,
Yeah,
power
10th
of the
Amendment.
state. And the 9th Amendment, of course, as well.
Because whatever is not relegated to the states is ultimately is in the hands of the people. So you can do that, but you can't ignore the sheriff in your county. You can't ignore the state when it shows up on your doorstep, because it's there in your community. If you don't have a handle on the government in your own community, what makes you think that you're going to have any semblance of authority to ignore the federal government when they come knocking? Because in essence, what will happen is that the federal government will join with the state government, because they rely on the states to handle localities. And then you'll have the federal, the state, and the county all in line and knocking on your door. And when that happens, unless your neighbors are willing to stand by you, which most will not, you are on your own. And that's what the Democrats and authoritarians bank on, is that you feel alone and powerless against the full might of a government that they have control of.
Okay.
Not you.
So let's touch on that for a second, because they do like to try and make, if you're a Republican, if you're a conservative, they like to say you're alone, you're this fringe, you're this outsider, you just don't understand. They always say that. You just don't understand. I'm about to be 57 on Sunday. And they love to say, you don't understand. I've had 57 years on this planet. I speak multiple languages. I've lived in multiple countries. Yeah, I do understand. Yeah, I just don't agree. There's a big difference between the two. It's, I don't agree is not that I don't understand. I just came to a different conclusion, which is just as valid as anyone else's. Perhaps more valid given my experience in my life. That's all. You can argue that, but that's something that isn't just a given. And look at what they're doing. They come out and they're screaming about the students, many of whom, and specifically the ones that broke the law at these colleges. They
Yeah.
broke the law. This is the key. They broke regulations at the college, which would be the equivalent for anyone else to get expelled. They took over buildings. They threatened other students. They disrupted the campus. This is what people are paying for. Individuals are paying tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars to get an education. They, because of their feelings, their political feelings, they said, well, we're going to hijack the building. We're going to hijack teachers. We're going to threaten students. We're going to physically act against people. We're going to break local and state and federal laws, camping in the middle of a campus, assaulting women, sanitation being absolutely massive sanitation hazards as they camp out on the grass on the university places. And they're trying to say, no, you have to support that. And they try and bring a groundswell against that. Most Americans don't agree. Most Americans say you broke the law. You are here as a privilege. You have no right to be in America. No visa holder has a right to be in America. And so when you broke our law, you lost the privilege to be in America. Get out, go back to your country. And you notice they never go back to their country. They go to Canada. They go to Europe. They don't go home. Right. They go somewhere else where their politics are in line with that other nation, but they don't go back to their home country, which makes me think that they're here on false premises. You know, they come here saying, I want to learn so I can go back to my country and help improve that country, to raise up the education, the knowledge, the capabilities of their home countries, which I'm all for. But they never go back. They go to Canada. They go to England. They go to the United Kingdom. They go to Europe, and they never go back home. Well, then you lied to us. You didn't have an intention to go back. You just wanted to get rich off the American system and live off of America for as long as possible. Many of them, 10% of all the student visas, overstay, and they become illegal aliens too, becoming a burden on it. So, and they tell us that that's okay, but being a conservative, you're all on your own. You're isolated. No, those guys are isolated. They're the not normal situation, and that's a problem.
We should expand that too. We should expand that to not only conservatives and Republicans, but also independents and moderate center lefts, because they believe that you're idiots. Anybody that acts independently, they're like, well, if you're independent, then that means you're on your own, right? No, it means that we're part of this country as an American citizen. Our independence is based on being able to interact with other independently thinking people and put a society together. That's our culture. Our culture, if it's based on liberty, which, let's define it. What is liberty? Liberty is being able to self-determine. That is your unalienable right. When you look at the Declaration of Independence and it says life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, what they're talking about is self-determination. You don't have to have a government tell you what to do. You're not an idiot.
No, you have agency. You're an adult.
You have agency. You're an intelligent being. You have unalienable rights that coalesce in the enumerated Bill of Rights to secure the free exercise of those unalienable rights. They can't be taken away from you, but they can be suppressed. And the way they suppress, there's a distinct framework on how you suppress a citizen's ability to freely exercise their unalienable rights here in the United States. It's secured by our Constitution. Yeah, as a citizen, you have to be a citizen to get that security.
Absolutely.
Visa holders are not citizens.
No. And the way they suppress it is they suppress our videos. They hide things from you. Like earlier, I was showing people, they're not talking about the 40 members of the Venezuelan gang in Texas. That's local news, not national. They don't want you to know about that. They don't want to talk about what's happening with Jasmine Sherman, the fact that she has a challenger. They don't want to talk to you about, well, actually, I was going to bring this up and just show everybody. Hang on one second. Notice, did you hear about this? It's really short. I think it's like a minute. I'll play this for you. You may not have heard of. If you heard this, tell me.
Democrats are desperate that they run on this every single year. They demonize Republicans and have demonized Republicans for years for saying, oh, why aren't you letting us build the broadband? You guys don't want people to be able to access the internet. The Republicans are so evil. No, we said, get rid of the regulations. Shrink the size of government. Shrink the amount of regulations. This is stupid. You shouldn't have to have an application process that costs 10, 20, 50 million dollars to make an application to find out if you can get the money to build the broadband. Yeah. You don't need to figure out whether you need to build child care so that people can get broadband. The Democrats are desperate.
So
they run on.
That's the entire piece. Now, this is reflecting on, you may have heard about it over the weekend. Yeah. This is with, actually it was on Friday, Jon Stewart, who is obviously not a Republican, not a conservative.
No.
Was being told by Ezra Klein, who was a former reporter for the New York Times. He's a known leftist. Again, so this is all on the left. They're talking about Democrat regulations under the Biden administration, where they spent $45 million, $45 billion has been taken out of your pocket, my pocket, the audience's pocket, to build broadband so people in all 50 states and 6 territories would be able, if you live in the middle of Bumble in America, you'll still be able to access the internet, to be able to get a job, to be able to order food, entertainment, whatever, educate your kids, whatever you want to do, you'll be able to do that. And it should be as simple as essentially lay down a cable and connect it to the houses. That's it. Dig a ditch, lay down a cable, connect the houses. It's a little more, obviously it takes a little more than that, but that's essentially what they need to do. And Jon Stewart emphasized or learned, Ezra Klein emphasized, and Jon Stewart learned, there are so many Democrat regulations stepping in the way of freedom, of clear enterprise to stop people from being able to get that broadband, that you have to spend 4 years and tens of millions of dollars to figure out how to fill out the application so that you can then actually get the money to start building something. The worst case example of that is now Gavin Newsom, who's trying to reimagine himself as some kind of neutral. I'm a moderate. I don't know what these crazy ideas. California is the leading progressive capital in the United States. Gavin Newsom is the leader he's the governor of California. He's the one pushing these policies. $128 billion. So that's how much it would cost to do high-speed rail. 1/3 of that had high-speed rail in Miami created by Florida. They did it in 4 years. It has been 18 years that California has been talking about high-speed rail under Gavin Newsom. They haven't broken ground. They have been spending money. This is the exact same example as what Jon Stewart learned and was amazed at. They have been spending 18 years figuring out how to fill out the application so that they can start doing the work. Meanwhile, the price, which started off at $8 billion, has now turned into $128 billion. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. In New York City, same thing. We have a train called the Q train. It's part of the subway. They built a section of the train, added like 2 stops. It cost about $1 billion.
Yeah.
They're now going to add 3 more stops. They're telling us it's going to cost $8 billion now. I'm rounding up, 7.7. So it's going to cost $8 billion. And they're spending $250 million on consultants. Here's the thing. They already spent $656 million on consultants to build the first 2 stops. Why do you need more consultants? You already know you're digging in the dirt. People in Europe do it for 1/10 the price in their biggest cities. You've just dug in the dirt to add 2 stops already. You're adding 3 more stops. Why do you need to spend another $250 million on consultants? And by the way, in each of these cases, all the things we're talking about, the examples I've just laid out,
Yeah.
they didn't go to the American people and ask them, do you want to spend money on this? Do you want
No.
to spend $250 million to have another consultant confirm that digging in the dirt is something that we did before and we can do it again? Do you want to spend that? Do you want to spend another $128 billion to put down the first rail of a railroad that's probably going to cost even more? Probably cost $250 billion by the time if it ever gets built. Costs $250 billion. Do you want to spend your money that way? They never asked us that.
No. And in fact, if you look at history in terms of like the railroad, even, who paid for the first rail to be laid? It wasn't the government. The government later in many states and territories would facilitate land for the rail, but who actually laid the rail? It wasn't the U.S. government. It was private corporations and and the barons, these economic barons that were like, we're going to invest in this on a private scale, and we're going to build rail across the country because we know if we can transport all of our goods from one coast to the other coast, we're going to make money. It was done by private industry. And the same could be said about broadband. We don't have to have the government take our money and spend it for us. If you wanted broadband in your area, you would pay for it. If the government would stop robbing you. This is why taxation needs to be restricted to whatever the constitutional jurisdiction is for each of the levels of government. Federal government should only be collecting taxes for 3 things: military, the administration and upkeep of the buildings for the Capitol building, Washington D.C., the government offices there, and the White House. And then the last thing is it should be for the courts. Those are the 3 things, the operation of the courts. Those are the 3 things constitutionally that the federal government's supposed to be taxing for. The state government has their own taxes. Same thing, because we federalized the entire system because that was the best way to keep power locally with the people if it operates appropriately. So the state should only be collecting taxes for the operation of the Capitol, the government buildings, and its courts. That's it. That's it. Everything else, all of the rest of your money should be staying in your community and contributing to the maintenance of your own infrastructure, should be maintaining your own services and encouraging private businesses to start up in local economies so that you have competition to keep prices down and you have the ability to grow your own community and expand. This is completely backwards. Our entire system right now is completely backwards. It's largely because we figured that the system that we had built, that our forefathers had finally built up to a level of prosperity, we could just hands off and let it run. And that was exactly the wrong thing to do.
Oh, you take your hands off the wheel and you crash. That happens in everything, whether it's a vehicle or life in general. You take your hands off the wheel, you crash every single time.
And at the moment, what we're finding is what we're seeing now is we have an opportunity in the next 2 years, less, because now it's been 3 months, 3 months since Trump got in.
Less, but yeah,
less. We have 2 years till the midterms. We have an opportunity right now to try and get our ducks in the row on a local and state level, so that if something funny happens, then we have at least a way to insulate ourselves and we have a bloodless battle going on. But I'll tell you this, if we don't fight now in the bloodless war, you're going to wind up abdicating your responsibilities to the government and you're going to live under authoritarianism that you will not be able to get out from underneath unless you pay in blood. And that's not what we want. We do not want that. The world is unstable enough. It's a crazy enough place. We don't want to have to go that route. We need to do what we can right now.
Well, you notice when we speak about this, and I want to be very clear for people, and again, if anyone disagrees, or even if you agree, you can always leave a comment on YouTube, Facebook, Rumble. You can do a super chat. You can do a Rumble rant to comment and tell us whether you agree or disagree with us, like when Joanne was mentioning that we sovereign citizens should have the right to freely travel with no government license, which I agree with, absolutely. And that's getting harder and harder to do, especially like New York changing the driver's license now to the freedom license, extra money for absolutely no reason.
Wait, did they change that again?
Yeah. They changed it so you have to have the freedom license. It's now required. And every time you change your license at this point, your driver's license, your non-driver's license, you have to get this freedom license, which is supposed to be a replacement for a passport. It doesn't. Other countries, they say, well, you can get into Canada and Europe. You can get, not all of Europe, but that doesn't get you into an embassy if you're overseas and you need to protect yourself. You can't.
You might as well just
get an embassy with a driver's license. It's not going to happen. Get a passport.
Might as well just get a passport at this point.
Just get a passport, but
just get a passport for everything.
Yeah.
Don't worry about driver's licenses or anything like that. Carry your passport.
Yeah, but where I'm going with that though is, and I kind of lost myself there for a second, is what we're seeing, the authoritarianism that we're being told is coming in, transparency. They're redefining the words, because you hear look at the violence that we see. Tesla stations are being burned down. Someone on Sunday was just arrested because a protester, a leftist, decided they saw someone who was in a Trump truck that had American flags and had the Trump flag. And so he didn't like that. So he ran into him. We've seen them. How many people have we seen that are getting arrested for writing slurs on vehicles, on buildings, torching vehicles, destroying businesses because they don't like it? And every single one of these individuals, they're on the left. The same thing with the autonomous zones that still exist in America. They reject all local, state, and federal laws. And they're all leftists. You don't see this from the right. And that's what's destroying America. And it's happening right now, because I'll push back against something that you said, because I disagree with one aspect, and I'll explain what I mean in just 1 second. It's not that it's going to come. It's happening right now. In Colorado, the lawmakers, the legislature, the left-leaning legislature of Colorado, decided that they need more gun control.
Shout out to Forest Mommy. Shout out to Forest Mommy for fighting that bullshit.
Oh, absolutely. She's absolutely against this. And I'm so happy that she is. By the way, she's another content creator on Rumble. I do tell people, check her out. She's also trying to enhance freedom and liberty. And this is something she was fighting against. This is more gun control. And what are they going to do? This gun control, it has nothing to do with criminals. As you can see here, this is about semi-automatic rifles and pistols and shotguns. That's affecting law-abiding citizens. That's people who have legal licenses. That's not criminal. Criminals don't get a license. They don't register their weapons. They don't care about whether you pass another gun control. This only affects law-abiding citizens who are factually, this is not a made-up number, 99.994% of the 160 million gun owners in America are law-abiding citizens. That is a fact. That is the numbers. When you do the math, 99.994 Americans are law-abiding citizens in terms of their firearms and their usage. We're passing laws that will stop law-abiding citizens from having a semi-automatic rifle or handgun or just a shotgun in general, because the Colorado Democrats don't like the guns. They don't like those firearms. It has nothing to do with people's safety. It has nothing to do with making people feel better. And we know that it doesn't make people any better off, because the fact is, every gun control law you have ever seen in the last 50 years, 5 decades, has not stopped gun crime. You've been promised it's going to stop it every single time. We talk about this all the time on this program with the Liberty First Foundation. We talk about it all the time, every Wednesday. And we see over and over again, yeah, we're going to pass this law and the criminals will follow the law. They don't. We're going to pass this law and there will be no more school shootings. There are. We're going to pass this law and there's going to be no more gun suicides. There are. They keep telling you this, that it's going to happen one day. And we have over 22,000 local, state, and federal, 22,000 laws about firearms. And gun crime is just as real today as it was before. In fact, we're still above 2019 levels of gun crime, of gun violence, of gang violence, of drug violence with firearms. These numbers are not going away. Domestic abuse with a firearm, suicide with a firearm. These numbers are all higher today than they were in 2019 because we had the Biden administration. They've been picking against you and me, regular Americans, the Second Amendment. And guess what? It didn't help you. It didn't protect anyone.
And it's wholly unconstitutional. I mean, even licensing to a certain degree. The Supreme Court, I can't remember what the case is. I could look it up real quick. But the Supreme Court said that any right that winds up being licensed becomes a privilege. And that's wrong. That is against the Constitution. So when you look at all these gun laws and these licensing things, like in the state of New York, for example, and California, that have the most stringent gun laws, they're all unconstitutional based on the federal Constitution. They just make it legal in that state because they lean on the idea that you can have a federal law that's equal to or better, and that somehow gives it supremacy in that state. But the thing of it is that in this particular case, your freedom to exercise your Second Amendment right is an ultimately secured right that is national. It's not statewide. The state can't just take your right and your free exercise of it and shove it to the side and say, this is how we do things in our state.
No, it's not our state. It is a 2-tier system, and it is biased against us. I don't know if everyone's talking about Cory Booker, Senator Cory Booker of New Jersey, whose claim to fame, he has 2 claims to fame. Well, now he has 3. The first one is he was against now Supreme Court Justice Kavanaugh getting confirmed.
I remember that.
Because he believed that a woman alleging a 40-year-old story was the truth. And every single investigation by Democrats, independents, and Republicans found no evidence. Every single witness in that high school said that her story was completely made up, not true. Tried to destroy a man's career, tried to destroy his life and his family by saying he's some kind of evil person. He's now a Supreme Court justice. This was Cory Booker trying to destroy someone's life with no proof.
Right.
That was his number 1 claim to fame. His number 2 claim to fame is he ran for president on the basis that he tried to destroy a Supreme Court justice with no proof. He got 6% at his peak. 6% of Democrats, forget the rest of the public who don't like him, don't care about him, don't know anything about him. He got 6% of Democrats to support him. He dropped out of the 2020 race, failed.
Right.
And now yesterday, he decided to attack our sitting president, Donald Trump, and Republicans and MAGA, which includes conservatives, libertarians, and Democrats. He attacked them all because he doesn't like them. And he spoke for 25 hours and he made history, complaining with no solutions. 25 hours of complaints with no solutions. That's the thing. And no one likes to focus on that. The mainstream media doesn't want to focus on No solutions. 25 hours. You would think that somewhere in the 25 hours, he could have came up with at least one solution to the problems that he's complaining about. No, he's talking about, I want power, I want control, and I don't care. This isn't about the people, what the people wanted. People in New Jersey voted for Trump. They voted for the changes. They voted to close the border, to deport illegal aliens, to shrink the government, to end the waste in our government. And Booker's against all of that. So he's famous for those three things. But here's the thing that I wanted to point out, which I thought is really good. And by the way, folks, yes, you saw our associate, Frank Johnson's coming in with us. And I think he'll want to talk about this in just 1 second. And it's this story. Here's the other thing that wasn't talked about yesterday. So not only is Booker, he got famous because he wants to run for the presidency. I'm sorry, I'm trying to get this up. He wants to run for president in 2028. So he's trying to stay relevant. So he made history with his complaints with no solutions. But that same day that he started talking on Monday, when he started talking, his staffer, a man that he called his best friend, Kevin Batts, was arrested in the Capitol because he had a unlicensed firearm. Now, Kevin Batts is a former New Jersey police officer. He's retired. He is a member of Cory Booker's staff. He's been a long-term member of the staff. Cory Booker, the only reason why this guy got into the Capitol grounds to the United States Senate, something that Democrats are so angry against. Remember, they were against Marjorie Taylor Greene carrying a handgun into Congress, even though she's fully licensed, a member of Congress. And they were like, oh my God, you can't carry a gun in here. That's illegal. How dare you? They were going to try and kick her out of Congress for this. Cory Booker went in, took Kevin Batts, told the security, he's with me. I am a senator. He doesn't need to be searched, and walked him past the security station with a firearm that he wouldn't let members, forget about staff, he wouldn't let members of Congress carry their firearm in. He was screaming about that, but he did it for his staffer, two-tier justice. And Kevin Batts, only because Kevin Batts decided to, he was confronted by the Capitol Police. They noticed his firearm. He admitted that he had it. He got arrested for it. And the story is dead. It is buried. It is put away because Cory Booker made history because he could complain for 25 hours in a row without a single solution. By the way, he doesn't believe in gun control. The laws that he's standing up for, the laws that they're trying to push in Colorado, yeah, he doesn't believe in that because his friends can carry an illegal, unlicensed firearm in the Senate, and you can't have any kind of firearm in your home to protect you, your family, and your property. That is the kind of hypocrite he is, and this is what the media is burying. I'm obviously very upset about that. How do you guys feel? By the way, did you hear that story? Did you know that happened?
Yep. Yeah, I heard about it.
What about you, Frank?
If you're looking for a certain level of shock,
Volume up a little bit higher.
For Christ's sake.
Sounds good to me.
I know Joanna, part of our audience, is surprised. I know some of the people in the audience have not heard about this. They got buried. It's a fact that this happened to a staffer, that he is violating his own position on firearms, the Second Amendment, violating that because it's his friend. But go ahead, Frank. I'm sorry.
Well, like I was saying, if you're going to look to me for any sort of shock or dismay, or over Cory Booker being a hypocrite, you're treating the wrong dog, bro. Listen, we all know that the politicians live by a different set of rules. Their circumstances don't apply to us. And why the hell not? Now, listen, I don't have a problem with Cory Booker's friend carrying a firearm on Capitol Hill.
No.
Yeah,
he's a retired police officer out of the state of New Jersey, and according to the law that was signed in 2002, he has, so long as he qualifies on a yearly basis, the legal right to carry in all 50 states and the District of Columbia
Should.
as a retired law enforcement officer. Now, because Capitol Hill has its own set of rules that are put in place by Capitol Hill itself and the Capitol Hill Police, apparently they don't think that that stipulation in the law applies to them, that they are sovereign in their ability to determine who carries a firearm and who doesn't. Now, I don't have a problem at all with Cory Booker's buddy carrying a gun. I encourage it. I'm happy he's there to lend a certain level of protection and security to the members of Cory Booker's staff and to Cory Booker, along with anybody else that may fall victim to some lunatic, that this is a man who's trained to respond to an emergency situation with the use of a deadly weapon. I am thrilled that he was there. I am annoyed that he was arrested. I don't think the Capitol Hill Police should have their own separate laws, and Capitol Hill should not abide by the rules and regulations set forth in the law. What pisses me off is that Cory Booker would like to see every member of his constituency, and by extension, every American, not afforded the same right that he is afforded. It's the hypocrisy that bothers me. It's the hypocrisy that bothers me that Cory Booker, who is a senator from the state where Phil Murphy is governor, and Phil Murphy has done everything he can to circumvent the Supreme Court's ruling that the people in their state have the individual right to carry a firearm. Cory Booker has done everything he can to fight that. He has supported every piece of legislation aimed at disarming the American people. So my purview is, if you don't believe the American people have the right to defend themselves, then you yourself need to voluntarily acquiesce your protection under the Second Amendment, whether by yourself or by extension, security or law enforcement. Now, it's funny that I mention this because at one time I had thought to myself, it would be pretty cool if we could have leftists put their money where their mouth is and volunteer their rights away as far as the Second Amendment is concerned. Unaware was I at the time, but such a function actually does exist. You can contact the ATF and volunteer to give up your Second Amendment rights.
Well, I suppose you could do that if you can give up your right as being an American citizen.
No,
then you can give up any right.
There is a form you can fill out through the ATF that permanently bars you from possessing a firearm legally. Anyway, from purchasing and possessing a legal firearm, it puts you on their deny list. So that if you should ever have a mental breakdown and decide you want to go buy a gun and whack your family, yourself, and your neighborhood, the ATF prevents you from doing it so long as you voluntarily go in and perform this ritual on your own.
Well, one question here. So what if, and this is based on multiple true stories. What if you are, as an example, a woman on a college campus? You've been indoctrinated throughout your entire life in the feminist, intersectional, pacifist ideology that we see in many of our colleges. And you've grown up with that. You then have a sexual assault against you, that woman. And going forward from that moment of that assault on that college campus, she then says, I want to defend myself. And maybe she's a 5 foot tall woman. Maybe she's the average of 5'3". Maybe she weighs about the average American woman, about 130 pounds. So most men are taller, are heavier, are stronger inherently by genetics. That's a fact. Whether people like it or not doesn't matter. And she says, I need to equalize. It's not that I can't fight. They're just bigger and stronger. That's just nature itself. And so she wants to get a firearm now because she's realized that her pacifist ideology is wonderful if you can have it, but she can't. And she needs protection. She needs a way to back herself up and to equalize against that weight height difference. Can she rescind that document?
Once you file for that form with the ATF, no, you can't.
Forever. So
It's
you never get to change your mind.
It's the same thing like renouncing your citizenship. Okay, but the ATF allows for a plan for you to give up your rights. So my challenge to Cory Booker and all the Democrats on Capitol Hill is go give up your right. If you are so attentive that you believe that Americans shouldn't have guns and that, there's too many guns in America, I believe you should all go voluntarily acquiesce and give up your rights to the Second Amendment and all protections covered therein, including your private security members, including response from police. So that this way, all of those defund the police movements that come out that said, instead of sending armed police officers to a crime in progress, we're going to send counselors. We're going to have, because this was true,
Yeah.
unarmed counselors will be the first respondents because they want to bring the tone down. They want to bring the temperature down. So they're going to send counselors out to kidnappings, muggings, rapes, murders, armed robberies, all of these things. They're going to send counselors out. So for Cory Booker to, one, it's shameful that he hasn't come out and addressed this, but it's to be expected. He's fully intending that the media is going to, continue about their business and not report the story. My challenge is going to be to the Republicans who are in control of the House and the Senate to make sure that Booker's friend, even though I believe was perfectly legitimately carrying a firearm and should be allowed to do so, be permanently barred from Capitol Hill in any capacity. Not just armed, permanently banned, because when they turn around and they're passing laws in states where, in Maine, for instance, there's a lawsuit that there's a law that the governor signed that says anybody that was pardoned by Donald J. Trump for their participation in the January 6th, quote unquote, I'm using air quotes for anyone who's listening, insurrection, will be permanently barred from being employed by that state. So, a non-conviction, you can be punished, have your civil rights to apply and take a job freely of your own volition, is being taken away in states like Maine. And there's going to be other states that follow suit until the Supreme Court weighs in on that. But if the states can do that, then certainly they can write the rules for Congress on Capitol Hill at the Sergeant of Arms to say, people who've been carrying firearms illegal here on Capitol Hill are no longer allowed to be employed in any capacity that allow them to retain. Now, maybe he can retain his employment with Cory Booker, but just not on Capitol Hill. Will not be able to enter the premises. And then we'll see if Cory would like to address that his best friend is being forever barred from the grounds that, that he's sullied by carrying a firearm onto in contradiction to their own rules.
Yeah.
Let's see Cory Booker not be a friggin' hypocrite for once in his life.
I truly don't believe that's going to be the case. Same thing with Colorado, the legislature there. All of these anti-Second Amendment states there, and all this, everyone who's suggested legislation that says the American people, can't have something they don't like. They will never take this option.
I'm saying what I would like. I'm not saying what I would. There's not a prediction in any way, shape, or form.
Them.
My prediction is that they just friggin' ignore any rules that are set aside for us piss-ons, and they do whatever the hell they like to do anyway. while continue to try and hold their head up as somehow morally and ethically superior. Would I like to for them to address their hypocrisy? Of course, I'm sure we all would. It would be a refreshing breath of fresh air. Is it going to happen? Absolutely not. They're hypocrites from the word go. They don't care about you or me or the rule of law. They don't care about anything except the power.
Yeah.
And how to hold on to it. They don't even care about their positions.
Right.
Because their positions change with the wind depending upon what pop culture tells them and what the polling tells them to do. They have no spine, they have no core, they have no system of belief other than what is the opposite of what conservatives do.
And even many conservatives do that.
Yeah, many conservatives do that too, but the thing is, I mean, conservatives will move their flagpole a little bit more towards the center. But for every step the conservatives move towards the center, the left moves 100 yards towards the left. They're going so far over. So if you want to, if the crazier you want to, if you want to see the left really, 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 really lose their shit, wait until Trump puts out his proposition that he's going to ask the IRS to charge the wealthiest in the country a little bit more money on their taxes. Because now you're taking a talking point away from them.
Well, we had brought up earlier in the show that Doge, while Elon Musk is with Doge, which is a contractual legal requirement, we didn't mention it before. There was a rumor, or the media was trying to push this idea that Elon Musk was leaving the Trump administration because he's getting kicked out or he did something wrong. I mean, the simple debunk: by law, as a special government employee, Elon Musk can only serve for 130 days. So this isn't something about the Trump administration or his job. That being said, Elon Musk,
the guy brought stranded astronauts home from space in 18 days.
Yeah.
In 18 days. I think him working for the government for 130 is like a 30-year contract to anybody else who's even reasonably articulate.
Right. Absolutely. But earlier he said that Doge, while he's still at Doge, they're going to investigate many of these members of Congress for their great wealth and some of the duplicity that they have been putting out. And I look forward to that transparency, which you're mentioning right now. I would love to see this transparency in our elected officials, and also love to see them take up your idea that, hey, you don't believe in having a firearm. Fantastic. You go sign away that right. You don't want a semi-automatic rifle. You go sign away that right. That is your choice. It has nothing to do with me because I have no problem with semi-automatics. I do not believe that semi-automatic firearms work like they do in Rambo. I've been in the military. I've seen them. I've fired them. I know it's not the truth. Semi-automatics aren't the problem. The gangs are. Foreign gangs like Venezuelan gangs, MS-13, they're the problem. That's where my issue is. It's not the firearm. It's always with them. But I wanted to bring up. So
before you do that, I'm going to pull a Mike Marshall. You can sign away your free exercise of right, but you can't sign away your right. Otherwise, the right is not unalienable. That's what Marshall would say.
Well, inalienable is it would be somebody else taking that right from you or charging you a premium in which to exercise it. You giving up that right, you have the ability to do that. The same way that you have the ability to renounce your citizenship, then you give up all of your rights and that come along with it.
I mean, people should have. I'm all fine. I'm fine with someone who wants to give up their citizenship, and there are people who do that every year. There are pittance of
but not enough. Not enough of all of these idiots you see on TikTok, Instagram, and everything. I'm leaving America. I'm going to Poland. I'm going to Germany. I'm going here. I'm going there.
Don't go to Poland. You'll ruin it.
When you got on the plane with your passport, did you come with the paper that said you renounced your American citizenship, so that after you're there for 6 months and you find out it's not what you wanted, that we don't find you at an American embassy looking for us to pay your way back, unless you've given up your rights to American rights? I don't care. Don't tell me that you're leaving the country when you have a round trip friggin' ticket. Don't tell me you know.
Whatever happened?
There's a movie.
No, go ahead.
There was a movie called Gattaca
Yeah, I
years
remember
ago.
that. Good movie.
All right, and it was a movie. Two brothers. One brother was physically gifted. The other one had physical ailments. And all the one with the physical ailments wanted to do was go onto this space program that they had, but you had to be perfect to go on this space program. And they had a situation where all of society was separated between the perfect and the imperfect. And the imperfect brother figured out a way how to take the identity of a perfect guy who wound up being a cripple, okay, and wound up assuming his life, and in the process made believe he was one of the perfect people. Changed his body, changed his look, changed everything about him. But the thing that struck me about it was that he got away with it until the very last minute, but then he still got away with it. But the thing that got me in that movie is when the two brothers swam out into the ocean. And for time and time and time again, the healthy brother beat the ill brother, until one day the ill brother beat the healthy brother. And the healthy brother said, I don't understand how you could have defeated me. And he says, I never saved anything for the swim back. He put everything he had into moving forward. So as he gave himself no escape clause, he put everything into moving forward and went for it. Live or die, he was going to win that race. All of these people that are signing that, that are going over to the airport and saying, I'm moving to Canada, I'm moving to Germany, I'm going to Greece, I'm going here. Renounce your citizenship. Renounce it, not only on paper. Make a video statement forever renouncing your citizenship. Give me your name, your birthday, tell us what it is, to see your face, and renounce your citizenship, and then you get on the plane and you go. Until you do that, don't be Rosie O'Donnell. Oh, I'm moving to Ireland. The Irish don't want you, Rosie.
They just
They
want
don't
money.
want you and your cold sores and whatever the hell else is going on. They don't want you and your daughter with a criminal record. They don't want you over there. You got an O in front of your last name. Renounce your citizenship.
Yeah.
Renounce your citizenship. Sell off your American property. Sell off your American stock. Any holdings that you have with American goods, American companies. Get rid of everything America.
Yeah, but they won't do that. They won't do that, and
No,
that.
and that's and they won't renounce their Second Amendment rights, because they need their Second Amendment rights just as much as we do. Where our Second Amendment rights are going to, I look at it as being a means of defending ourselves from them. They look at the Second Amendment as something they can deprive so they can take control of us.
Yeah.
That's the difference with the Second Amendment.
You know,
Yeah.
when I was
Right.
overseas, I don't know if this ever changed, but when I was overseas and I had the offer of getting a passport and becoming a South African national, I was told that I could not hold American citizenship by the embassy, that I couldn't hold American citizenship at the same time that I held citizenship in another country.
That's
So
not
if I were to accept, well, this is what I was told.
okay.
So if I were to accept South Africa's offer of a passport to become a national of South Africa, I had to go take my American passport to the embassy, turn it in, and renounce my citizenship and be a South African. I couldn't hold dual passports. It stuck with me because in South Africa there were guys that had British passports. That was allowed. So it wasn't South Africa that was telling me this. It was the embassy that was telling me this for America. British passports, and there were Greek passports, Indian passports, and these were dual citizens living in South Africa. And I
Right,
thought, you know
these are-
what? I didn't want to give up my American citizenship, so I never really looked into it.
No,
These
no,
are
you can
the only
have.
way you can, but you have to. It's the same thing about being reciprocity with a firearm. You have to have an agreement between the nation heads themselves that allow you to become a dual citizen there, like Israel. You can be a dual citizen of Israel.
Ireland, England.
Of Ireland. You can be dual citizenship so long as there is an agreement between those nations that those nations respect your American rights while you're there, and we respect their rights while they're here.
So you won't get that with
the
Russia.
Right.
Russia, North Korea, China.
But
don't get
that that doesn't extend to the Second Amendment.
No.
Sure. But to bring it back with Cory Booker, which I think is a big deal because people are talking about it because they're like, history was made. Yes, but nothing was done. Nothing effective, nothing efficient. And the duplicity was never highlighted, which I think is very upsetting to me. And I think that's important that the history, well, this is part of that history. It was part of that historic moment, is the underlying foundation of disrespect and dishonesty. And that's not being addressed here. And it has, look at all the conversation we've had from that one moment, and they don't want to address this. They don't want the American people to know it because they're afraid of how we're going to react. And I think it's kind of interesting because it goes along with something else. I don't know if you guys heard about this, and let me show you because I thought it was kind of interesting. Kind of goes into a lot of what we've been talking about. Monday, I was at an event, covering an event with the New York City mayor's race. The disgraced Governor Andrew Cuomo is leading the Democrat pack for a primary run and is seen to be the front runner.
Yeah.
For Republicans, the front runner is the man on the screen right now. That's Curtis Sliwa. He's part of a group called the Guardian Angels that have been around for 40 years, helping to protect the rights of individuals, citizens, just doing what citizens are legally allowed to do. And he's been doing it himself. He's been shot in defense of people in this nation. He's helped the homeless. He's helped people with mental disabilities. This is all documented. This is a fact. It's not an opinion. And he was at an event on Monday. I was recording it, and that's a record of it. During that event, which, by the way, not one New York news media organizations besides myself was present. I want to emphasize that. We were in Midtown Manhattan, where the offices of almost every major U.S. and many international news agencies are. There are thousands of New York Times, ABC, CBS, NBC, Newsmax, you name the news station. They've got an office in New York City with hundreds, if not thousands of employees. This was on East 23rd Street on Monday in Manhattan. They sent no one. This is the leading Republican candidate for the mayor of New York City. You would think at least one of their written or news media publications would have covered this event. They did not. Why? Because they don't talk about him. It's the same thing with Cory Booker. They don't talk about Kevin Batts, even though he committed a crime, which was complicit, that Cory Booker was complicit in breaking the law for his friend. Well, the news media is complicit in hiding a candidate from the public. They don't talk about him. They don't even acknowledge that he exists. They only say, well, it's Andrew Cuomo, Curtis Sliwa. And Curtis, there was a protester at this event. And I think it's important to understand the differences that we're talking about. Curtis Sliwa is talking to public. News media doesn't want anyone to know. Curtis Sliwa has to deal with a protester during that live, that meeting, that conversation with voters, News media doesn't want to cover it, doesn't talk about it. It is a fact. I have it documented in photos and video, and I was there as a witness. None of the news media will talk about this. They do not want the public to know they have a choice. But at the same time, we're seeing that Cory Booker, they'll talk about his historic, he can have a complaint, a bullshit session that lasts 25 hours, and they're all happy about that and forget the underlying crime that he did just before he started those 25 hours. Because it's not just that he had two-tier justice. It's a crime. He enabled an individual with a firearm to enter into Capitol grounds, something that Cory Booker has fought against, something that he doesn't want his constituents in New Jersey to have, the American citizens. He doesn't want them to have that right. And he enabled this guy to break the law, knowingly break the law, as he spent 25 hours to tell the American people about how he feels and how his feelings are more important than the laws of this nation, transparency, and the will of the voter. That is incredible, as we see Curtis Sliwa and others are trying to fix this problem. This is why I'm speaking to the audience now. Folks, this is why you need to be involved. Whether you agree with any of those individuals or not, whether you like me or not, I don't care. You need to be involved, because this hypocrisy does not make the nation stronger. It does not make freedom free.
Right.
Does anyone disagree with me, guys?
No.
No, but I would just encourage Republicans in New York City to find an actual candidate.
Yeah.
At the moment, Sliwa is the leader. There is no one who realistically is going to take him down. That's not going to happen. And again,
Well, he got 312,000 votes in 2001.
Yeah.
He's not a Republican. He might call himself a Republican, but he's not. He's not. He has no conservative ideology. He has no conservative core. He's an opportunist. I don't know how a guy what does he do for a living?
he has several things. He has a consulting agency, as I understand. He has the Angels, of course. He still runs that.
I thought the Angels were a nonprofit. I thought it was
They
a
are a
volunteer
nonprofit.
group.
Nonprofit volunteer doesn't mean that they don't make money.
I'm sure they make money. I'm sure he makes a very decent amount of money. I'm sure that the suits that he wears now with his little red beanie, cost a pretty penny. I'm sure he's not down on Nassau Street buying his suits. I'm sure he's, probably getting them someplace else. I honest to God think, and this is going to be me, I would rather see Ed Koch come back from the dead and run New York City than see Curtis Sliwa anywhere near Gracie Mansion.
Well, I would say that I would want Ed Koch back from the dead versus anyone we've had since Ed Koch.
Yeah, since Ed Koch, yeah.
Okay.
Ed Koch was, yeah. And Ed Koch was a left-wing Democrat, but he was pragmatic and he gave a shit about New York City. He might not have always been right, but he cared about New York City enough that he tried. He engaged with the people of New York. He listened to the people of New York. Now, granted, if you looked at the city council that he had during his tenure as mayor, you would realize that it didn't matter if he was left wing, right wing, thigh, leg, breast, whatever part of the bird you want to be on. It wouldn't have mattered because the city council was going to drive New York City into the shitter anyway.
Yeah, they tried. He fought against it a lot, but to give context, because a lot of the audience out there right now probably are, I'm, as I said, older, going to have my birthday on Sunday, but people may not realize who Ed Koch was. He was the mayor of New York and one of the most beloved, he's right up there with LaGuardia as one of the most beloved mayors of New York and very popular around the nation. He was so popular and so effective. He ran as a Democrat. He ran as a Republican. He won in both cases.
In both cases.
He's the only, as far as I'm aware, the only mayor who, without changing parties, ran as
Well,
both parties in an
well,
election and won.
did Boomerang Bluebird did the same thing?
He switched parties.
He switched parties, but that was after the election.
Yeah, Koch
Yeah,
never
Pete.
changed parties, and
Yeah,
people
Pete
loved him.
Someone's an 80 Democrat like Ed Koch's MAGA in 2025.
It's
Yeah,
true.
right.
It's true.
Yeah, pretty damn close. But yeah, as far as listen, as Vass, you've been down there in New York a little bit longer than I have now. I've been gone for quite some. Well, you were gone for quite some time too, out of
20
New York City. Yeah, so you and I were both, displaced from New York City politics for a while, with the exception of our relatives and friends that lived down there. So we weren't privy to the day-to-day stuff that was on. But I remember Sliwa
So
from
do
the
I.
80s and 90s and the early, growing up there. He's a patronizing.
He's no perfect.
He's a showman. He's a showman. That's all he is. He saw a movie one day called The Warriors on WPIX. Okay, he saw a movie with the Warriors. He fell in love with Deborah von Valkenburg, who was in the movie, and he said, "Ooh, look at this. Maybe I can have my own little gang, and we can run
Okay,
around on the trains."
I disagree with the characterization, but here's the most important. See, but the thing I'm speaking about actually isn't whether anyone likes or dislikes Sliwa himself in terms of his politics, in terms of his run as a Republican as mayor. That's not the part that I'm concerned about. People don't have to like him. It's that the news media has invalidated him. That's my problem. And at the same time, they are validating a person who just committed a crime on federal grounds.
I understand that point of view, but to the fact of the matter is, Curtis Sliwa invalidates himself the same way Al Sharpton does. People, they use him for the photo op, they use him for the mouthpiece, they use him for the press when it's convenient for them. But when it comes down to it, neither one of those people have any sort of credibility whatsoever. Now you got they're elevating Cory Booker because they're trying to recapture the Obama. They look at Cory Booker as, oh, maybe he could be on next Obama, because they know damned well that Alicia Ocasio-Cortez and that other dimwit over there from Texas, Jasmine Crockett, whatever the hell, Jasmine Crockett shit. Neither one of them has got the intellectual wherewithal to fight their way out of a Ziploc bag. So they're not gonna hold water. They're both gonna crash and burn. I'm watching articles right now. Oh, the new ticket is gonna be Cortez and Crockett. Cortez and Crockett. It's like, what is this, Miami friggin' Vice? Which one of them lives on a boat and has a pet alligator? I mean, it's ridiculous. So they know that the only rising stars they have in the party are nincompoops. So they're trying to latch on to somebody that might have some legs. And Cory Booker, for lack of a better word, has been around a little bit now. He didn't just show up on the national scene. He's got a little bit of name recognition. They're going to try and play him up. This thing right here, the reason why the media is not talking about it is because it put a hitch in their step. They had the cameras already set up from C-SPAN in the house to watch Cory do something, and they said, "Oh wait, his bodyguard just got arrested for having a gun. Oh shit! What are we gonna do now?" They already invested.
Yeah, but that's
already invested. It was too late for them to shut the camera off because they had nothing else to go to.
They
had to stick with them.
They have plenty of cameras. It's Washington D.C.
No, I'm saying they knew he was going to talk for a certain period of time, as the media always knows. They know what the block is. They know what the lead story is going to be. They know what everything has to be. So the media channels for the left already had Cory Booker slated in the same way they always do whenever somebody has one of those canned speeches that every single Democrat repeats. You know, after they make a montage of it later on because it's all pre-planned. This whole thing was pre-planned. They didn't expect Corey's bodyguard to show up with a gun. But so now it's too late. You can't avoid the plan. Now you got to follow through with it.
But
So they
that's my
figured the
but
best.
you see, that's my
Right. So
problem.
they just put they put the gun thing away. They said we got to stick with the Booker thing. Right now, nobody gives a shit about the mayoral race in New York City.
Not at the moment.
You know
It'll
why
heat
they
up
don't
again.
give a shit? You know why they don't give a shit? Andrew friggin' Cuomo.
Because he's got $25 million in a war chest because he was
Because he killed 17,000 friggin' people.
and 11 counts of sexual assault.
Right.
I know.
They don't want to pay the New York mayoral race an ounce more of coverage than they absolutely have to, because they have to give enough time for everybody to forget that Andrew Cuomo put COVID patients in nursing homes and killed thousands of innocent people. They have to wait for the civil suits to go away. They're not, because every time that
They've already been tossed out.
all right, but here's the thing: every time you get Trump before he was elected, how did every news station introduce Trump? Disgraced former president Donald Trump, because they have to lead with disgraced. And then after he was disgraced, convicted felon and former president Donald Trump. This is before he. Now they can't say that. Now they have to just say President Trump. Now they have to say President Trump. They're not going to give the media any opportunity to say, accused murderer.
Yeah, but Frank, I'm not. I understand.
Serial philanderer, ass grabber.
I understand.
Sexual predator. They're not going to say that.
I understand that, Frank, but that's my point. And maybe, Dal, you tell me. My point again is these. We're highlighting. This is the failure of the news media to do its job, and that's why our organization, our channels are important to do the job for them, but it's also more important for the public. You've heard this now. You've heard both sides. You've seen what the mainstream news media put out. We're showing you the evidence that they have suppressed on this and asked you to evaluate it. I think my point is, whether you like it or not, we have to have this conversation. Doesn't that make sense, Dal?
Yes. I mean, yeah, we have to have the conversation because the conversation isn't being held in the normal forums. It's lies by omission. But the thing is without our audience, we don't get the message out at all. We can sit here and we can talk in circles all day long, but it really comes down to the people. And we need to reach the people. And the audience is a large part of that. The liking, the sharing, the subscribing, the getting the message to their friends. Clip it. YouTube's got a clip function. You find something that you want to share with your friends. You want to see, Frank or myself get red in the face because Voss is always calm and collected. So whatever. I mean, but
not always. But yeah.
Well, even when you get passionate, you very rarely turn red and start having veins bulging out on your forehead.
Yes, black people can get red, and I do.
It's more of a purple.
Yeah.
In your case,
a mauve.
It's a mauve. Yeah.
Yeah.
But my point is you're both correct. The largest problem we've got right now is that the lack of candidates is because we don't have servants that are seeking office. We have power-hungry authoritarians that are gradually gravitating towards these centers of power, and then think that once they're in office, they're not going to serve anybody but except their own interests and those of the nobility that have been christened around them. That's not how this works. That's not how America was founded. And that's why I was saying at the beginning of the show, we are in a period of time where we, as the citizens of the United States, have to make the determination. Do you want to be a subject or do you want to be a citizen? Because if you're going to give up all the responsibility that comes with being a citizen, you are voting by inaction to be subjugated. And I refuse to be subjugated. I will show up. Even if I'm the only guy at the polls that votes against everybody else, I will vote for liberty. And I will encourage everybody else to do so, because it makes life unlivable if you have somebody telling you every instant of your life, you need to do this. You need to do this because we say it's for the public good. You need to do this because we say it's for public safety. You need to do this because ultimately all those phrases, public health, public safety, public good, don't necessarily are that. They're just translated phrases for power. You have the power if you're willing to use it. But if you're not willing to use it, then you are going to be subjugated. And that's not what America is. And this country will cease to exist as we know it and as it was founded, and we will be just like every other authoritarian governed country in the world. Let's make no bones about it. America is unique in the sense that the power of governance was laid at the feet of the people if they could keep it. And right now, we're not doing a very good job of keeping it. We're basically giving it away to all the narcissistic, authoritarian. Yeah, I have words. But anyway.
Well, we've done a pretty good job in our past, not only us, but our previous generation did a pretty damn good job at giving things up ever since 1917. You know, they've given things up. They've given, you know, with the promise of a chicken in every pot and all the rest of this stuff, and oh, we can educate your children, and we can do this and all the rest. We have been doing ourselves a tremendous disservice by continuing the traditions, bad traditions that our ancestors, you know, started after they forgot what liberty felt like. You know, there were plenty of times when Americans could have stood up and said no, but they didn't. Now we're just used to it. Too many people are used to it. And the problem is, like Vass, you said the media is not doing their job. Well, this is part of the problem of people getting used to it. The media is used to it. They are doing their job. They're doing the job they think they're supposed to do. Lend cover to the ideology that takes power away from the people and puts it in the hand of the politic and the select few. The media believes they're doing the job because this generation of media, that's what they were taught is their job. They weren't taught about the W's, the who, what, where, when, why, and how. They weren't taught that that's what journalism is supposed to be. They weren't taught about not being a part of the story. They weren't taught about refraining from your political and personal ideology and letting that cloud the story. They weren't taught that the story is the story. You report the facts in an unbiased manner, and you let your reader or your viewer or your listener determine for themselves what the best course of action is according to their belief system. They weren't taught. You have that chick on the Morning Joe who said Breitbart News is telling people what to think. That's not their job. That's our job.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. The media is doing their job because this is what they think they're supposed to be doing. They haven't been taught otherwise because the people who taught them, they are clouded in their judgment as to what journalism is. Nobody understands what journalism is anymore because the last real journalists, not including you, are dead. Are dead. Walter friggin' Cronkite is dead. You didn't have any idea what side of the aisle Walter Cronkite fell on. The only emotion you ever saw with Cronkite, the only emotion you ever saw with Cronkite was when we landed on the moon and when they killed Kennedy. Yeah. And when they killed Martin Luther King. When somebody of notoriety was killed, regardless of who it was, you saw emotion because you can't fake not having the emotion. but you didn't know what the ideology was. You didn't care what it was. You trusted the voice. And what did it say? What did Lyndon Johnson say? Well, who is it? When you lose Walter Cronkite, you lose the war. When Cronkite
Yeah.
started reporting all the bad things that were happening in Vietnam, that's when public opinion on Vietnam started to turn. Because Cronkite finally, at that point in 1969, started showing his ideology, started putting his point of view out there. And that's when you got shows like 60 Minutes, and that's when everybody would start to opine about things. They didn't talk about their belief until they started getting the uh, editorial minute at the end of the show. That's when they did that. But
Well, that's
now
when
they
the op-ed became the story and not just an op-ed. They
right
started
now
tracking them. Good.
Yeah, so that's where it is now. I'm just trying to. But this is what they think now. They don't go back to examples like Edward R. Murrow.
Great one.
Okay, they don't go back to that. They think if you were trying to teach somebody how to do a talk show, a late night comedy talk show, and you said, okay, I want to give you an example of who you're going to follow, who you should look at as an example of who to do a show. Johnny friggin' Carson.
Actually,
Johnny
they would probably
Carson.
pick David Letterman.
No, I wouldn't go with Letterman because
No,
Letterman
not you
got
and me.
political.
I'm saying
No,
in the current culture, they would
no.
probably
The current
point to
culture,
him.
the current culture would take that piece of shit Jimmy what's his face.
Kimmel.
The
Well,
one they would go
he's
Kimmel.
a bad imitation of Letterman.
Right, they would go Kimmel. They would go with that idiot Colbert, and they would go, "Oh, that's what you should model your show after." Okay, I mean, I would rather they even go back to the Daily Show with Jon Stewart rather than go with these
Well,
examples
his
today.
original version.
The original version, right? But if you and I would go back to Carson, you and I would go back and even before our time, if we asked who are my parents, who would have been the best person,
Merv Griffin.
Ed Sullivan.
Ed
It would have been
Sullivan.
Ed Sullivan. It's the Ed Sullivan friggin' theater, for God's sake, that the Late Late Show was broadcast out of. The Ed Sullivan Theater.
Yeah.
Journalists today don't look at classic journalism. So they think their job is to report the way that Joe Scarborough reports.
Yeah, but
Because they go, what TV news anchor is making $10 million a year? I want to be just like them. Well, the ideologue on MSNBC who just gives you left-wing talking points the whole time, that's who I'm going to be like.
no, I get that, but and I'm not disagreeing with any of that, anything that you've said. I agree with all of it because that's the experience I am seeing, and I see that amongst my peers and my, I guess you could say, opponents, people I work. We're in the news industry, doing punditry and commentary. We see this all the time, whether it's on YouTube or in the mainstream news media. And my point about these things is look at what we are losing as a nation in terms of free speech is being destroyed before our eyes because we're not able to have a conversation, just like we're having the conversation right now. And our chat, in some points, they agree with some of the things you, me, and everyone else has been saying. Sometimes they absolutely disagree. We, each of us, have agreed and disagreed on various issues, not just on this episode, but others, trying to point out what we see as the most important aspect of any story about how this is affecting our Constitution, our freedom, our ability to be Americans. What is it to be an American? That's what makes America great, is having that conversation, having that dispute, and finding the common points when we can, and identifying if we can't find those common points. And that helps us and make America better, helps us to make our legal system, our judicial system, our legislative system, every aspect of our lives, trade and commerce, you name it, gets better. And no one is served when they are pushing tripe like Cory Booker has made history for wasting everyone's time 25 hours without a single solution while avoiding the underlying crime that he committed. Meanwhile, we have other individuals who are, at least, even if you want to say that Curtis Sliwa is providing lip service, even if you want to say that, which I don't agree with, but even if you say that, he's got zero presence, and he should have at least some level of coverage. We're not talking about an unknown individual. We're not talking about someone without any money. We're not talking about a race that no one's paying attention to. Just because Andrew Cuomo, and even Andrew Cuomo, again, whitewashing this situation, ignoring the reality there. No one's talking, the media isn't talking about the 11 sexual assaults that AG Letitia James, a Democrat, said he did based on her investigations. They don't want to talk about that. They don't want to talk about the 16,000 that he, through his legislation, were killed, and the copycats. There were another 4,000 in Wisconsin that died because of the copycat of Gretchen Whitmer. There was another 8,000 that died in California because of the copycat Gavin Newsom. They don't want to talk about any of that. And that is destroying America, because that isn't freedom of speech.
Well, no, freedom of speech works two ways. You are free to speak, and others are free to listen. They are exercising their freedom of speech by omission, but they're providing a disservice to the American people by neglecting to tell the truth.
Mm-hmm.
They're doing what they think is right and what they think is just. So for them to say we would rather not talk about it is, to them, perfectly acceptable.
See, I don't think that's right or just. I think it's in promotion of their ideology.
Well,
that's an agenda.
That's what I'm saying.
That's them, not right. It's agenda.
No, it's, to them, they think they're doing the right thing. That's their agenda. I just said they are of that ilk. For them to protect, preserve, and promote their ideology, they have two things they have to do. Either lie about it or keep their mouth shut about it. Because if they told the truth of their ideology, everybody would be a conservative. All right, that's the point. They have to lie or they have to omit. Now, if they know they're going to get caught lying about everything, because this is the 21st century and everything's on the internet and on video and on audio, and we can dig it all up, so they omit, because it's better to not get caught with what you didn't say than to get caught with what you did. So for them, they would rather let the New York race stew, because this is what happens when you give the New York race coverage. You're going to have to talk about Andrew Cuomo's shortcomings and his horrendous record as governor.
At some point.
Okay. You're going to have to acknowledge the crime rate in New York City that was brought on by Eric Adams and his left-wing city council.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Then
you're going to have to acknowledge the fact that when Eric Adams broke ranks with the Biden administration, he was investigated and indicted.
Yeah.
You're going to have to talk about that. Then you're going to have to talk about the newly found alliance between Eric Adams and Donald Trump, which is then going to open up light on Letitia James's fallacious, felonious case against Donald Trump, to which he was wrongly convicted and hopefully soon to be overturned. So for them to put the New York City mayoral race anywhere in front of the American people does nothing for their ideology except bolster Trump and bolster conservatism. Because now we can show everything that they're wrong about and everything that we're right about, not only by pointing out their failures, but by pointing out the successes that we've had since January 20th. So they're not going to touch New York. They would rather leave that alone and say, I'm not putting that on me, and say, I'm going to omit from covering it and leave it be, let the chips fall where they may. Who can we cover? Cory Booker? Great. Oh, shit. His bodyguard's got a gun with him. Ah, shit. Omit that too. Wait till we find something else, because by next week, you're not going to hear nothing about Cory Booker and
Nope.
his marathon speech.
By
You're
Friday,
not going to
you
hear
won't.
nothing about You're not going to hear nothing about the New York City mayoral race. You're not going to hear nothing more about anything except Orange Man bad. And
Well, yeah,
we've
they
got to
love that.
get right, and we've got to get used to the fact that that is the only thing the current crop of media gives a shit about, is because they have no legs to stand on. None whatsoever. They're swinging from the thread over the lava, and that's all they got left.
No, I don't dispute that whatsoever. I don't think anyone does that is objectively looking at what's going on right now. Obviously, it is the answer to every solution to every problem is Orange Man bad. Everything. If you're listening to the mainstream media and also the politicians, but we're going a little bit long, so I did want to. I know there's two events we wanted to highlight before we go. One is what you're working on, Frank, and one is, if I may indulge myself,
Please
my
do.
birthday.
Happy birthday!
Yeah. No, it's not yet.
You.
Oh,
not
no,
yet.
no,
And I
no,
can't, and I'm not even allowed to sing that song.
No, God,
I might
no.
get hit with a copyright infringement.
Well, there is that too. The one time I'm happy about it because I hate that song. Well, I hate it when it's applied to me. On Sunday, this Sunday, April 6th, it will be my birthday. I will be officially 57. I count ahead. I don't care. It doesn't, trust me, you hit 57, you don't care about your birthday. It's not a big deal. For me, now most people will go out, they'll go out and drink, they'll have a party with their friends or something like that, and that's all good. I instead decide to go on to a live stream, a marathon live stream, which will be at least 12 hours long, 9 a.m. to 9 p.m. And I will be available and talking about everything and anything, depending on what chat wants to talk about. I will have guests. I expect that I will have Maj Toure. I will have Kit Cabello, Larry Sharp. Some of the members of my Patreon will be joining in and coming in at various points, and it will just be me talking as well. And this year, I'm doing something a little different. Is on top of all of that, and
he's doing it naked.
Huh?
You're
What?
doing it naked.
No. There will be one or two special guests, maybe a member of Congress that may be dropping in as well. But also, I'm doing this in part to raise money for the Jericho Project, which helps people with homelessness and children. It's a well-known charity, very well recognized. And so we're going to be raising money for that charity to help people, because I am an advocate to help people with homelessness, have been for many, many years since I was homeless myself. So we're going to be raising money for that charity. Plus, I want to talk to people. This is my birthday. This is how I celebrate. So everyone is welcome. And I know you guys also, I know a couple of you have said you might be able to make it. I know it's a Sunday, it's schedule. You're, of course, each and every member of the Liberty First family is welcome to jump in, and you guys may be joining as well as some of the other names I mentioned as well. So I just wanted to bring that up before we left today to let people know, yeah, that's going to be happening again all day, 9 a.m., 9 p.m. at least. Check it out for 5 minutes or check it out for longer if you want to.
So
Okay.
it's like Cory Booker, but half the time and twice the truth.
It'll be at least half the time and definitely
at least twice the truth.
God, yes. You know,
Question.
I can't help myself.
Who's walking Con while you're on
No, I'll take a break. At that point,
good.
I'll take a break. I'll probably put on like a speech that I've done at one of the colleges that I've been at, and I'll do one, and then I walk him, and then I come back and just pick back up.
Mm-hmm. That poor dog. He's going to have to wait 12 hours.
No. Khan is he's officially 14 years old in February.
No.
And, no, I walk him when so that means I'll have at least 2, possibly 3 breaks.
Yeah.
So,
All
and
right.
the other thing is your news, Frank.
All right, as you guys may have, we mentioned last week that we made mention of it. The weekly roundtable is going to be appearing for 3 days live from the NRA annual meeting show floor in booth 656 on Radio Row as part of the Voices of the Second Amendment. There's going to be 18 different podcasts that are all broadcasting 3-hour segments over 3 days. So there will be 9 hours of broadcast over that weekend. Unfortunately, it doesn't look like Marshall is going to be heading out to to Atlanta with me. So I will be there live in person, and Marshall will be doing his appearances from remote. As I imagine, if you guys are available, you guys are going to be welcome to be there. We're going to be sending a link out to you. We have got. I can't tell you. I'm legally not allowed to tell you right now who we have as guests.
But they're big.
Okay.
But they're
Yeah,
big.
we've got some very, very, very heavy hitters coming into the show. They're going to be joining us for various segments. Now, each show is going to be 3 hours long.
Is one of them you don't have to answer this, but I want one of them to be Mike Johnson so I can look him right in the camera and I can tell him you suck.
I don't know. I don't know. I haven't gotten my full. What it is there's a pool of guests that the NRA has assembled that they want to put on all the various podcasts, and what they wanted to do, our friend Amanda Suffolcool, who's an NRA board member, she was instructed by NRA to put this little program together, and she said, I need you to find unique voices in the Second Amendment, and we would like to have them come down. And according to her, she said, I could think of no one with a more unique voice than you, meaning me, because we talk a bit. And we've got a list of guests that are going to be appearing not only on our show, but a laundry list of other shows. There's going to be 18 of us that are broadcasting from there, which is why they need these big blocks of time. So Radio Row is 20 booths that are all put together. So NRA is actually building us a booth right now. And if you saw our backdrop that we have right here on our corner right there, that's our backdrop logo for the booth. So that the little clip I put up here, the share screen, that's promotional material that NRA started disseminating today because they're advertising for the show for all of us. And we hope not only to have the guests from that NRA is giving us, but we're going to be pooling together resources with all of the other podcasts that are there. And we're going to be appearing on each other's programs.
Oh, that's
so
awesome.
That we want to start reaching out to the audiences of guests of shows that normally might not find us, and we want to reach out to guests that we might not normally find, and do a little bit of cross-promotional work and try to build everybody's audience up so that we can get a larger share of the market on constitutional thinking when it comes to podcasting, and these kinds of programs. So this is a tremendous honor for us, and it's an even bigger opportunity for us to reach people, to get the message out there, to bolster the ranks of the Liberty First Foundation, to get people on to No Sound Bites Allowed, to get people on to the Range Report, to get people to come on and join, follow, share, click, subscribe, like, all the rest of that good stuff. And we could not be more grateful to Amanda and the folks at the NRA for giving us this opportunity. We know that it stems from, this didn't happen by chance. This has been a very, very long road for us that we have been literally pushing that boulder uphill for 10 years. Trying to get to the point where we had a little bit of recognition, that we had a little bit of respect, that we had a little bit of credibility. And when I look at the people who were naysayers to us and what we've been trying to accomplish, I don't see them broadcasting from the NRA.
Yeah.
So that says an awful lot. The fact that our voices are not only being heard, but they're being respected enough to where they believe that we need to be heard by others.
Yep.
And we would like to hear from them as well. So again, thank you for anybody who's, and listen, if anybody in here who's watching, listening, or whatever, if you find yourself out in Atlanta for the NRA annual meeting, stop by the booth. Stop by the booth, say hello. I'm going to be easy to spot. You can't miss me. But if you want to sit in on the conversation, there's always an extra mic, always a set of extra earphones. If you want to just sit and watch, it's fine. There'll be an audience out there where people can sit and watch which booth they want to watch for what show they want to watch and listen to. We're going to be being broadcast all throughout the building. We're going to be being broadcast on the NRA website, Facebook page, internet sites. We're going to be everywhere. All right, we're going to be like a really bad rash.
Toe fungus. You never really get rid of it.
I don't know if that's the visual I want to paint.
No.
But yeah, we're going to be really hard to get rid of. But that's where we are. So with that, I'm going to say goodnight to you guys. I want everybody, please, this Sunday, please, 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 tune into Vasquez's channels for no sound bites allowed in the Michael Vasquez show, and let's give him some love, and let's help him raise a few bucks for a really, really good cause. I hope I'll be able to chip in myself too. Mike does a lot of good work that you'll never ever know about because he doesn't toot his own horn. I think he sold his horn long ago. Yeah, but like I said, everybody tune into Vass this Sunday and wish him a happy birthday. If you can't buy him a cup of coffee, maybe you could help somebody in the homeless community. Maybe put a meal in front of them for the holiday coming up soon. So with that, I'm going to say goodnight to you guys. Dal, thank you very much for coming on. Everybody in the audience, thank you so much for being here. We love you, we respect you, we care, and we appreciate you so very much.
Absolutely.
Vass, have a great night. I'll do the sign out. You guys be safe and shoot straight.